Dance music here too, as far as oh my goodness. All right. All right. There's the dance music, Curt. I think it's time for us to mosey into our interview. Are you ready, sir?
I'm ready.
All right, let's turn it down. All right. Hey, everybody. Mike Lawson here with CU Broadcast. We are here with NAFCU's very own chief economist, Curt Long. And we had a little dance music there going on there for our intro music. But it's a Friday, so why not? So Curt is here talking to us. Curt, you join us like once a quarter, I think now. So it's always fun to talk to you about what the latest and greatest is going on in the economy and all sorts of all the number stuff that's going on out there. And you look at it from the kind of the credit union perspective as usual, but always fun to have you on, sir. And so thanks for taking time on this Friday to hang out with us for a few minutes. We always appreciate it.
Yeah, happy to. Thanks for having me.
You are welcome, sir. So today we're talking about the latest jobs report, and you've already put out a statement about what's going on there. And then we're also talking about the Fed Chair Jerome Powell's kind of his timid outlook on the economy, and then we're kind of going to wrap it up in a nice bow at the end on how it all affects credit unions these days. So that said, Curt, let's dive right into it. Can you give us a quick recap on the latest jobs report that just came out and what it means to credit unions out there? What did you see?
Yeah, I mean, from where I sit, it was a great report.
That's what I heard.
I think some people might quibble, especially with the top line number for jobs growth, over 300,000 jobs added in February. And I think, for some people that might be a little much because everyone's looking for what does everything mean for inflation? It all orbits around inflation. And so that's a lot of jobs to add. But I think from my perspective, job growth is not necessarily inflationary. I mean, you're adding to the labor supply for companies that are looking for more workers. They're able to increase their output, and that could be beneficial for inflation. Mm-hmm. So we got a bunch of jobs added in February. The other thing that happened was the labor force participation rate ticked up again. I think this was the third straight month that participation has improved, mm-hmm. and it's actually back to the highest point that it's been since March of 2020.
Oh,
so
wow!
Basically back to a COVID era or
pre-COVID era. Yeah,
that's right. So we're still not quite back to where we were pre-COVID, but continuing to make progress there. And then I think the big one, the one that everyone was really focused on was the hourly earnings mm-hmm. data, and that moderated as well. So on a month-over-month basis, we got the slowest month for wage growth in a year. And so again, I think more good news if you're worried about inflation.
Right. So all that stuff. So how does that affect inflation without getting too much into the weeds here, Curt? Because I know you could probably talk about this for an hour, but how does the slower wage growth affect inflation, and then the increased jobs as well? How does all that stuff play into it?
Yeah, I mean, there's historically been a connection between wage growth and inflation. Mm-hmm. As workers are earning more money, they tend to spend that, and that generates a lot of economic activity and generally speaking, more inflation.
Mm-hmm. Gotcha. The other thing I wanted to talk about was Fed Chair Jerome Powell's his timid outlook on the economy as well. And I know you wanted to talk about that too. So what's say you in that area?
Yeah, I think he's sort of beat the steady drumbeat over since last summer. Mm-hmm. He sort of wears the Dr. Doom persona every time he makes a public appearance. He tries to sort of downplay anything good that's happening and suggest that there's pain on the way. So I think this really it speaks to kind of the framework that the Fed is operating from, which is that recognizing that inflation is too high, how are you going to get that back down?
Yeah.
And even though we've seen some improvement on the inflation front, I think from the Fed's perspective, they view it as sort of a last mile problem. Mm-hmm. Like, how are we going to get from where we are now back to target? And that's going to be a challenge. And I think from where the Fed sits, it's going to require wage growth to slow down even more than it has. Yeah. And for that to happen, again, in the way that the Fed's thinking about it, unemployment is going to have to go up.
That's what I was thinking too.
So, that is sort of the background to how Chair Powell is thinking about things. I think the other thing is, it sort of works in his favor if every time he speaks, markets react poorly, because that has an effect on the economy as well, and he's trying to slow down the economy. So if he's going to make a mistake, it is not going to be to talk up the economy too much. It's going to be on the other side of things.
Yeah, talk it down so it stays down. Yeah. So and logically, when you talk about that type of stuff, Curt, is like you would think it would work better the other way around. You would want employment up, not employment up. so things work in a positive fashion, but it sounds like it works in reverse there, just looking at it from an outsider's perspective. So it's just it's very odd that it works that way.
Yeah, I think the phrase that people are using a lot nowadays is, bad news is good news.
Mm-hmm.
So whenever we get, bad news on the economy, people say, well, silver lining, it could be good for inflation. And so you're sort of caught in between two.
Yeah, that's where we are right now, between a rock and a hard place, unfortunately. So, hey, speaking of pain that you mentioned earlier, where's the recession hiding? What's going on here? I thought we were supposed to get hit by it by now.
Yeah, if we were in certain parts of the country or maybe certain sectors, we might be saying, when is this recession going to end?
Oh, okay.
Housing is probably in a recession.
Yeah, you're right.
In some respects, and the tech sector. I mean, we're live today, so I can talk about the news of the day. But a bank in Silicon Valley just went under, and so certainly there's some struggles out there, especially in those sectors. But I think for the most part, corporate sector earnings are strong.
Mm-hmm.
We just talked about, even though wage growth is declining, worker earnings are pretty strong right now.
Mm-hmm.
People are working. So, all of that, I think, suggests that, there's a lot more tailwinds to the economy than headwinds right now. Right. China reopening, that should be somewhat helpful. Europe is not nearly in as bad shape as we might have feared. And so, I think overall there's reasons to be optimistic that we can avoid a recession, at least, in the near term for sure.
Yeah, I keep hearing soft landing now. Soft landing is kind of the terminology that I've been hearing on my end too. So yeah, you're spot on for sure. So what's the impact of all this on credit unions? So what should credit unions be doing, if anything, right now, or just kind of, continue to kind of sit and do a wait and see approach?
Yeah, I think for credit unions, the economy is a good one, generally speaking.
Mm-hmm.
I think loan demand is going to be there for credit unions who can absorb it. I think for a lot of credit unions, the challenge right now is the same challenge that we've had for the last 6 to 8 months, which is just rates being very high.
Yeah, and
so that affects liquidity. And so I think a lot of credit unions are still kind of grappling with that, and just not only the size of the increase in rates, but how quickly it happened has really altered their balance sheet is sort of reacting to that in different ways, and so they're sort of strategizing around that, I think, still.
For sure. Yeah, the last couple of conferences that I've been to, the topic of the day hasn't been crypto like traditionally it has been, the last year, but it's been liquidity. People are like liquidity. That was, that's the big talk at each of the conferences. What do you see in that area for credit unions?
Yeah, I think if I think it's tough right now. It's not just credit unions; it's banks, especially community banks that are facing these same challenges. And so, rates going up affects their assets in some quirky ways, but especially on the deposit side, deposit growth has been really slow. I mean, we're used to, if you encounter some challenges in the economy, usually deposit growth is really strong. There's a flight to safety. People want to put all their money in a safe place, like a credit union. But that's not the case right now. With rates being where they are, deposits are are going down, or at least going up very slowly.
Yeah.
And so that's, I think continuing to pose some challenges for credit unions.
For sure. Yeah. What a difference a year makes, right? So it's just, we were talking kind of almost the opposite this time last year, or at least a little bit further out. So yeah. Anything else here to add to wrap up here as we approach? I mean, the other thing I'm thinking about is we're approaching home buying season. Spring is right around the corner, and it's time to buy that new home again, or if you're moving or something like that. So anything that you're seeing on that one, just off the top of your head?
As far as home buying, I mean, I think I think some of the same challenges that have been there are going to persist, just because mortgage rates being where they are. That's really having an effect on supply. No one wants to get rid of their mortgage that their 3% mortgage,
right?
So nobody wants to move out of their home, and so
right.
The numbers I've seen suggest that supply is still really depressed. I think that demand is starting to pick up a little faster than supply, just because I think a lot of buyers have been on the sidelines for a while, and have just said to themselves, I gotta go. I gotta get that home. Kind of absorb, coming to terms with the fact that maybe they're not going to get a 3% mortgage.
Yep.
But with that said, that there's just not a lot to buy right now.
I hear you. All righty. Well, Curt, I'm going to let you get going on that one. So, I mean, again, we could be here for the next half hour talking about this stuff. It's so fascinating on how the economy, it's roller coaster right now, and it must make your job an adventure every day. Literally, you come into work the next morning like, oh my gosh, look what happened. So, yeah. So, well, thank you very much for keeping us on top of this, Curt. Always appreciate your expertise and your insights, and always look forward to the next chat, sir. Well done.
All right. Thank you, Mike.
You are welcome. And then get our little background music going again. So, all righty, sir. Thanks again, Curt. Well done.
Thanks, Mike.